Hey everyone, I want to welcome you back to another update where we're going to finish off the series of talking about the characters and their stories. So, we in previous videos we were talking about how basically you could take this story as deep as you wanted to go. You can go, ankle high, or if you wanted to go really deep, you could do that. We allow you to do that in the board game and things like that. So we thought we would aspire to those people who would be interested in learning about the characters and why you'd want to play these different characters. We went over the characters that originally had no uh, lore in Shadowgate, the four characters, and then we talked about the four characters that did have lore in Shadowgate, and we're going to mix it up a little bit because this one's going to have people with lore, people without lore, and people in future lore and stuff like that. So we're going to have a really cool time with this one. By the way, my name is Chris Geiza, and I'm here with another project manager, Chris Mosley.
Hey,
How's it going? So, we're going to start off tonight by talking about Lieutenant Kahu. Lieutenant Kahu, if you're familiar with the 2014 game, is basically one of Talamar's generals. So, she's a bad guy through and through, leading a goblin army into Castle Shadowgate to basically kill off the circle and lay waste and basically do whatever Talamar wants her to do. Well, we thought this would be a really cool opportunity to expand upon her actual like character and things that she would be doing as far as like as far as trying to maybe undermine the Warlock Lord. And basically, when we talk about her story, basically starts off saying, by leading the goblin armies of Drakahan into Castle Shadowgate, Lieutenant Kahu was beckoned by Talamar the Black to aid him in overthrowing the wizards belonging to the Circle 12. Destroying and plundering every village between them and Gatekeeper Mountain, the 12 were outnumbered and overcome very quickly. Only Lakmir the Timeless seemed to outwit their advance, barricading himself in one of Shadowgate's towers. Once the last of the circle is slaughtered, the ritual to opening the summoning chamber can begin, and the enslavement of the behemoth will bring the calamity of man to ruin. However, if Kahu can gain the power for herself, then no one would ever have commanding power over her again. Lieutenant Kahu holds a powerful secret. Inflicted with lycanthropy, she can turn into a werewolf when the tensions arise. So, yeah, so she is, again, a flip card character that can flip once an event is played to reveal that she is either human or werewolf. You get to choose which side you want to flip her to. So, which makes for a very, you know, versatile character. Her stats from her strength and her mental switch when she does make the transformation. She's smarter when she's the human and more physical when she's the werewolf. So, what are your experiences with Kahu, Chris?
she's one of my favorites,
Yeah.
hands down. I like the fact that she can switch anytime there's an event.
Yep.
It lets you really kind of be a bit more strategic with some of the different quests that come up. I also liked her in the game too. But whenever we play, it's a riot. So I play as Kahu fairly frequently, and one person we play with always, we trash talk a little bit, semi co-op
Yeah.
game.
Absolutely.
And that player always ends up getting the crossbow, and I'm threatened with being crossbowed repeatedly.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
so it's an actual long running gag for us. But nah,
Sure.
great character. I really like her a lot. I think there's also the subtext there that you understand that she's working for Talamar for now.
Sure. Yeah. She's doesn't want to take orders for the rest of her life. She's probably she can't be stupid enough to realize that like Talamar is not eventually going to probably turn on her too. So she needs to hold some sort of power. And why should she share it? She's the one doing all the work. So and it's interesting. Like so that's kind of her motivation in our board game. Now in the real game, she probably might not turn on the world. May or may not, depending on what her what her story might be. But I thought this was interesting. There's actually a letter that she writes about her interactions with Talamar and Lakmir. Basically, she writes something down in her journal in the 2014 game. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. So, and it's very interesting too because there's something more going on with Kahu and Talamar. So, in this one, basically, when you open up her journal, it says you read the entry on the last page. Summer moon year 1157. The wizard remains within his tower, holed up like some cornered animal. I have lost scores of my best troops trying to gain entrance. And for what? For naught. I do not agree on wasting such resources, but the master has commanded that our endeavor look legitimate. intrigue means nothing to me, is I would rather use my arts to eliminate those nettlesome roots. However, my orders are clear. The charade must continue. So I find that to be really interesting because Talamar is telling her to stand down from just going in and trying to kill Lakmir, which is very strange. Like, unless Talamar has a reason for keeping Lakmir around, which basically is to summon Jer to the castle and open up the I think it's the doorway, the skull doorway, the Great Barrier to getting into the, because up until this point, Talamar has no way of getting to the behemoth, so he needs Jer's ability to do that. So it's very interesting that, basically telling Kahu to stand down. It sounds like an order she doesn't want to abide by. Like I said, you can already see kind of the conflict starting with between the two. So, thought this would be a really good time to bring about the sparring between Kahu and the characters, or Kahu and Talamar. Like, the really cool thing about her is that when she becomes fully equipped, you can force every other player to discard a non-staff item of your choice. So again, playing to the strengths of the bad guy. It's really, really cool. So the next character I want to talk about is not actually named in the Shadowgate lore, although we've given a name to one of the characters in the Shadowgate lore, and that is the Taiyan Ranger Shan-Ra. So a Taiyan is basically a half lion, half man creature that, according to the before Shadowgate lore, some wizards had created on the Eastern continent. So and I believe that they're now free creatures, though they travel together. So the story we came up with, Shan-Ra, goes into the story of before Shadowgate. Like I said, when you hear the word the name Shan-Ra, we're basically naming a character that actually shows up inside the book. So because he doesn't have a name, so his story reads: a Taiyan ranger belonging to a created race of beings that are half human and half lion, located in the eastern continent of Tai-Enoa. Shan-Ra and his pride encountered Jer's adventuring party after they traveled to answer the call of the signal fires lit to call for aid at Castle Shadowgate. Converging on Jer's party, Fezlin Quickfoot offended the traveling Taiyans, and for their honor challenged Fez to a fight to the death. Ikaria steps in for Fezlin as she does not wish to see him slaughtered, and he would have. And after a lengthy battle, Ikaria wins against Shan-Ra, but relents from killing him, winning their honor and the Taiyans' respect. Considered in Ikaria's debt for sparing his life, Shan-Ra and the other Taiyans go with Ikaria to guard the adventuring party by forming a perimeter and shield around them as they travel. Shan-Ra learns of Kahu's deeds and vows to aid in bringing her to justice, rescuing the land from the Warlock Lord. So, one of the things that I was thinking about when we were creating the game was that I really wanted to incorporate one of the tie-in characters. After reading the before Shadowgate game, I had the option of adding 2 extra characters. And originally they were going to be stretch goals, but since I had already paid for the artwork and things like that, it was like, let's just make them as part of the Kickstarter exclusives. A part of the first edition of the game. So basically, I totally wanted to put in a tie-in character, and I was like, what kind of class of character are we missing? And I was like, one of the things I always loved, like I used to play Ultima Exodus, was that you could play as a ranger character. And I was like, the ranger was kind of cool because it was kind of a jack of all trades. So thinking about that was really cool when creating Shan-Ra, because he is the first customizable character in the board game. So he starts off with 2 base traits, and you'll notice that every other character starts with 4. So you get to choose which 2 other base traits get +1s at the beginning of the game, as well as he can only be equipped with, it shows that he's only equipable with 1 relic, 1 weapon, and 1 spell or magic item, and the 4th one you get to choose yourself. So again, making him very versatile, but completely customizable by whatever the player wants. So what do you think about Shan-Ra?
Yeah, you could choose your own adventure character.
Mm-hmm.
Like, play with him a handful of times. It's just interesting to build something out that's kind of a mix of other characters. Really, I think where he shines is if you get the item combinations, he can become super powerful.
He can be just pretty formidable. Yeah, and he's like a huge favorite of all my the 317 crew when we go out and play and stuff like that. My friend John absolutely has to play as Sean Ra. He's like, that's my character. I'm playing that one, and it's really cool how it's really cool that you can like pull yourself toward a character. Like, who would you say is your favorite character so far?
Hands down, it's York.
Oh
York
yes.
is actually, little known fact. York came about. Well, do you want to tell the story of how York came about?
So, no, you go ahead. I've done
Okay, so
most of the
York
talking.
came about because I have a remarkable ability to just get bogus high rolls all the time.
Very
Just
lucky.
like 3-4, 3-4, 3-4. It's instinct. You
Yeah.
can't teach that. It's just, yeah. So that just kept happening, and it was such a joke. And so we sat down and we figured we liked York. We liked the idea of York and the
Yep.
power behind York as a character, as a lore element, and
Hmm.
a major functioning piece of the Shadowgate story.
Yep.
But the mechanism of the character was to introduce a character that's semi-chance based.
Yep.
So, at the beginning of the turn, you roll. If you get the skulls, you get to pick up an item card.
Yep.
And then on top of that, my favorite thing about York, and this is when the game always gets really fun, when York's fully equipped, he cannot take a death card. He's
Yep.
undead.
Yeah.
So because of that, all of a sudden you are immune from any staggeringly high roll scenario. So like the Goblin Stairwell or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
you just go guns blazing at that as high as you can. And those
Absolutely.
moments get really tense, and it's just, especially towards the third set of quests, like you're like, oh, can't die on this one. I'm
Yeah.
gonna roll for it.
Yeah, it's funny because when you take death out of the equation, like people get really gutsy when it comes to trying to make rolls and stuff like that. It's like, oh well, if it has no consequence, let's just do it like do that like this, and which is a strategy, absolutely. But you will find that playing Yorick will definitely trying to getting him fully equipped is a chore in itself, but remaining him equipped is another thing too, because there are times when you have to sacrifice certain items and things like that, and that's usually inevitably when someone's going to get a death card is right then and there. That's happened on more than one occasion, especially with your brother. When we played with Chris's brother, he was Yorick,
Yeah.
and the one round he unequipped to be able to gain death cards, like he ended up getting like two or three. It was pretty funny. So
Yeah, so not overpowered. I mean, that's the other thing.
no,
He's well balanced.
he
That's actually
he
one of my favorite things about all the characters in the game. There's never one character that dominates.
yeah, yeah, and I think probably my favorite character is probably Catalia Mar, the cleric. She's just, I think, and I say that just because of having written part of her story and things like that. I think she's a very relatable character. She's the heart of the group, and I could see how her story would play itself out, and to be that voice that calls Jer to what he's supposed to be, and like her dynamic with Theradun Ray, where Theradun is in love with her and things like that, and he can't really do anything about it. It's just one of those things where you start to see the dynamics where she's helping Jer out, but Theradun's probably getting kind of jealous about stuff like that. And meanwhile, he still thinks that he's from the line. He is from a line of kings, but he's trying to insert himself into the prophecy and things like that. So yeah, like I said, I think it'd be a really cool thing to see in a book or RPG or a movie or Netflix. Hulu, call me. I've got some great ideas, man. So anyway,
Anytime.
so the last character I say the last, but next to last character we're gonna talk about is Raven. Raven is actually from a game that never came out. It was a Nintendo 64 Shadowgate game called Shadowgate Rising. If you want to learn more about Raven, there is a comic book that is posted on the Shadowgate Facebook page that Dave Marsh, the owner of Shadowgate, has actually posted a comic book that he had done, trying to in kind of like before the Shadowgate Rising game came out, and so you could actually read that and see where her story really ultimately leads. But for those who haven't read it or whatever, I'll explain how she fits in here. So Raven is the hero of the Third Prophecy, which is a future Shadowgate storyline. Raven is a descendant to Lakmir the wizard and gets her innate magical powers from her bloodline. Carrying with her the Soul Orb, the mysterious artifact of unknown origin, the orb wills itself to aid her in her journey, to remake what was undone, as her prophecy had foretold. Discovering the skull of Yorick as she begins her newest journey, Yorick tells Raven that he was the creator of the Soul Orb, and that he knows of her lineage to Lakmir. This sparks Raven's intrigue into the character and decides to take him along with her. Her journey takes her to an ancient ruined city where she finds the Brotherhood, a conglomerate of 4 united clans of magic that Lakmir had formed before his disappearance. These exiled people are being hunted down by an order called the Dreamers from the kingdom of Gwenendel, led by its newly crowned king Elrith. In Raven's time, her struggle comes with attempting to unite the two warring factions, the Brotherhood and the Dreamers, to confront the resurrected Warlock Lord. Without their combined efforts, the Westland will be lost. So it's a really cool story. Like I said, I think her story would make it for an awesome, RPG campaign and things like that. Like to tell the story with enough detail and justice, I think that would be really cool. Would it be cool to see in point and click adventure? It would be okay, but I'm wondering if you could fit all that kind of story in something like that. But still, regardless, she's a fantastic character. I actually have her. It's not prototype. It's like a. I'm blanking on the word, but it's basically like the first drawing of her, like to kind of get the idea of what she should look like and things like that. I was able to acquire that, and so you get to see her, and she looks like a character that Bruce Timm would have drawn, like from the Batman animated series. So it's pretty cool. You get to see her and one of her friends from the comic book. So it's pretty cool. I think I should talk to Dave about getting the comic book actually made at one point in time. I think it'd be really cool, especially if Shadowgate starts to take off with its future, iterations, things that are coming out. Shadowgate's going to start getting more mainstream again. I think it'd be really cool to see the comic book eventually come out. I think it'd be really cool. So, so that being said, she is closely tied with, like what we talked about in her story. She's closely tied with Yorick. We've already talked about him. So there's a big story arc that is going to happen that we believe that should happen with these characters. That if we get a chance to tell that story, it would be really cool. But we won't go into too much detail about that. Just know that they are playable characters in this particular game, even though they may not necessarily fit in the timeline. They are still fun, absolutely fun to play. And her soul orb comes into play as her fully equipped ability. That basically you get to copy the fully equipped ability of another player. So it makes a really cool dynamic for the soul orb. She's basically absorbing their powers type thing. Yeah, her being a sorceress, a descendant of Lakmir, she gets to discard equipped magic items to add +2 to any one of her traits. So it's pretty cool. So I really like her. She was someone that Dave Marsh so badly wants to utilize in a Shadowgate game right now, because he didn't get a chance to do that in the 64 version. So it was one of those things where Dave Marsh, we were talking about doing extra characters, and he's like, what do you think about adding Raven? And I was like, yes, absolutely, because she's like I think she'll be a fan favorite when the time comes and things like that. And like I said, to be able to play as her in the game just adds another, again, dynamic to it. So, and that's what I love about this, man, is the characters. The characters make this game so really cool. They have such depth to them. So
that's true. I mean, really, if you kind of do like a D&D campaign, and you insert your own little story there, like there's just enough to get the ambition of the character.
Sure.
But there's still enough to let it be, fleshed out. Like, what happens if Raven wins, right?
Yeah.
She's got that soul orb in tow. Like,
yeah.
It's, it's really interesting to think about. What happens if Yorick wins?
Yeah.
Like, those characters there's a lot of different avenues you can take that to.
Yeah.
Or, like, going back to Kahu, you just want to be a jerk to all the other characters. There's enough items in the game that let you do that.
Right.
Or you can run the torch counter down.
Yeah.
Like,
and all these characters, Jared doesn't have, in our board game, Jared doesn't have to be the High Lord of the Westland. It can be any character. So it's like you guys get to play as these characters, and basically, if you wanted to role play it out, like I said, we have a great time when we play, like with our Wednesday night group and online, and they don't mind getting in the characters and poking fun. Someone plays as Kahu, they don't trust, give that aura, they don't trust that person and stuff like that. So it's a really good dynamic, and like I said, it does lend itself for a really great story. Like you can tell every time you play it could be something different. So and to finish off, like I said, we've talked about Yorick, but the other character that was added to the Talamar Rising expansion set was another character named Grim Axe Grinder. Grim Axe Grinder, we talked about in a different video with Board Game Rundown. This is kind of what sparked this whole video. Is basically talking about these characters. Was that Grim Axe Grinder is a warrior from another war that happened prior to the events of Shadowgate. He's basically coming to the point in his life where he's getting old, and he's realizing that people not only don't remember the war, but they don't really appreciate those who fought in it. So he feels like he's losing purpose in his life. and when the signal fires go up, that there's a battle at Shadowgate. He picks up his axe and just heads right to Gatekeeper Mountain, where he does meet up with Jaren and his party and things like that. But he's out to prove himself. He comes with 2 item cards called Heroic Banners. So you can imagine him running into battle, like trying to rally the other the other warriors to come in and draw them together and stuff like that. But he is in it for, I guess, his own personal glory. So there is that aspect of it. Is he going to go around and help the characters, or is he going to put them in more danger by running into the fray and things like that? So it'd be really cool. I mean, he's just, I think he's a very relatable character. Everyone in our lives, if we do something great, it's imagine one of those things where you're remembered for something really awesome, but then 40 years goes by and nobody talks about it anymore, or nobody remembers it anymore. It's like, would that fit in your life? You talk about, I think one of the driving things in people's lives is purpose, right? That's kind of the thing. We're teleological beings. We're people who strive for purpose, and we're purpose driven, where we've got to hit these goals and things like that to better ourselves and to find purpose in our lives. And that's what Grim struggles with, is trying to refine purpose in his life. And like I said, again, who can't relate to that? That's so good. I think it's really amazing. And like I said, it would be so cool to tell these stories in a much grander scale, but the board game is enough, at least for now. The board game is enough. And like I said, you can live these things out as you're playing the game, and like I said, talk with people, and like I said, everybody can get into the role of their character and stuff like that. Who doesn't want to do that? That's really fun. So so what, you got anything else, Chris, you want to talk about as far as the characters go?
I was going to say, I mean, I met a fair amount of people recently that have maps from 30 years ago that they drew out for Shadowgate, like the original Shadowgate. People that have run through, read stuff, tried to figure it out, like the story behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of passion for it. And the board game is, one, just generally fun as a board game. Like it's self-contained. It's not too long. It's different every single time, sometimes significantly so.
Yeah.
But it also lets you like dive back into that world. You get to see all the locations. You get to see old characters that existed but never got to be in a game.
Sure.
Characters that were in a game, and as you said, they're all relatable. I mean, Jer is not. He wasn't the best warrior. Wasn't the best guy out there. He just was there. The paladin is interested in a girl that's not interested in him. Yorick is undead and kind of a little bit ridiculous going on about stuff. Lakmir is just trying to hold it together.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot. So there's an archetype along with most of the characters, and it's easy to tell your own story with it. Let alone when stuff goes haywire and somebody ends up taking 3 turns in a row, and you're like, okay, why doesn't Lakmir just fight the Warlock Lord by himself? All right, if you're gonna play like that. So there's a lot of fun. There's many different ways to go through it.
Sure. Yeah, and like I said, you guys get to tell these stories. It doesn't have to be us. So, again, if we haven't earned your business, we hope we can do that. So if you haven't backed the Kickstarter, we would absolutely love for you to do that. And we do have a big announcement coming at the end of this weekend, so stay tuned for that. And I appreciate you guys, your time and listening to the stories of a couple guys who are trying to give meaning to a really awesome franchise. So thank you for that, and we will see you guys on the next one. Have a good one.